Well, tomorrow at this time, Idaho's abortion laws are going to look a lot different. On Friday, the state's criminal laws on abortion kick in. It begins with a 6-week ban known as the fetal heartbeat law. Next week, a far more restrictive ban is going to go into effect, which basically outlaws all abortions except for some very specific scenarios. That one is known as the trigger law, unless a federal court pauses that law on Monday. I guess we're going to have to wait and see on that. So how will any of these laws impact our medical community? Well, those health professionals are speaking out, expressing major concern with how this law, all of them, are written. To magnify their voice, over 300 Idaho medical professionals signed a letter expressing urgent concerns about how they do their job in regards to these new laws. The group is called the Idaho Coalition for Safe Reproductive Health Care. And today, hours before the 6-week criminal ban goes into effect, Joe Paris spoke with 2 Boise doctors who signed that letter.
As Idaho's 6-week criminal ban on abortion is set to go into effect on Friday, medical professionals across the state remain concerned about the second, more restrictive abortion ban set to go into effect in 1 week, August 25th.
We have significant concerns about what the total abortion ban means for normal patient care.
Dr. Lauren Miller and Dr. Kylie Cooper focused their work on maternal fetal medicine in Boise. The pair is 2 of more than 300 doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals that signed on to this letter, calling attention to glaring practical issues they see with Idaho's near-total ban on abortion.
Basically a public service announcement to say this is what we're really worried about, both for ourselves as physicians and how we're going to take care of our patients. And so a group of us at the coalition got together and wrote the letter and decided to publish it in the local newspaper.
To be clear, the concerns expressed in the letter are not meant to be political in nature. They are practical concerns. The letter reads in part, quote, "The total abortion ban and fetal heartbeat abortion ban, as they are currently written, are dangerously vague and excessively restrictive." Dr. Miller details one example.
So in the total abortion ban, they define a clinically diagnosable pregnancy. So terminating any clinically diagnosable pregnancy is punishable by imprisonment for 2 years. A clinically diagnosable pregnancy to us as healthcare providers means many things, right? Any type of pregnancy, no matter how abnormal it might be, is still a clinically diagnosable pregnancy. So that means I could be charged for completing a miscarriage that still had a heartbeat, but the woman's hemorrhaging in my emergency department and it's in her best interest to get that done with for her. It could be that she's got an ectopic pregnancy. There could be a fetus implanted in her fallopian tube and a cesarean section scar, you name it, somewhere outside of the normal place for a pregnancy to be. It's still a clinically diagnosable pregnancy. That's not medical language that we use. And that is where the fear lies, is that doing our normal day-to-day job puts us at risk, that if there's a prosecutor out there who wants to get involved and say that we ended a clinically diagnosable pregnancy, having that law signed and in our Idaho code puts us all at risk.
Idaho medical professionals continue to speak out on their concerns with non-medical language being in the law, something that complicates crucial decisions that doctors need to make quickly.
As a medical provider, we have ethical obligations, which include do no harm, to act in the best interest of the patient, to support their autonomy and decision making. And these laws have caused a lot of conflict with those oaths and the morals that we hold as medical providers. And it certainly keeps me awake at night.
Some language in the laws leave gray areas about when a doctor can do an abortion, the pair says. And the consequences of making a life or death decision on a moment's notice is complicated by the threat of a prison sentence if someone outside of the emergency decision disagrees with an abortion decision weeks later.
In the total abortion ban, it is simply to prevent her death. Death is never certain until you are dead, right? There is a huge continuum where we know it's a possibility. Again, take ectopic pregnancy, for example. If we go back to data from the 1800s, 60% of women will die from their ectopic pregnancy. Is a 50% chance of dying enough to intervene? Is a 20% chance of dying enough to intervene?
To be clear to skeptics, the pair explains that they see serious pregnancy complications very frequently, not just once in a while.
We see ectopic pregnancies in general OBGYN clinics every single day. This is day-to-day normal activities for an OBGYN to care for complications. About 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage, extremely common. Again, thinking back historically, the #1 cause of death for women before we had modern medicine was complications from childbirth. We do not want to go back to that, right? We have modern medicine to prevent us from ever having to watch a woman die.
So where does the group go from here?
It's our hope that we're able to inform the public and to explain the nuances of pregnancy, to impact future legislation to try to reduce the harm that will come from these bans.
Assuming the total abortion ban goes into effect next week, is to continue gathering support, to work with the legislators to likely have to introduce a new bill this year to addend the total abortion ban, to put the correct medical language into it, to have the opinions of the public put into it, to make this a safer law.
You know, listening to them speak, Joe, it seems to me, and I know we talked about this, it's almost as if the lawmakers didn't bother to consult any doctors when they crafted these bills. And other than the women who are pregnant and needing an abortion, they're the ones that are going to be most affected by this.
And that's some critical feedback we've heard from the medical community for weeks, including in this story, where they feel that if there was more of a seat at the table while the laws are being drafted, and again, this would be back in 2019, 2020, that they feel they wouldn't be in this gray area or this nightmare scenario, as one doctor told me, where they don't know if they're in an emergency situation, if they're going to go to prison for saving someone's life. Now, if you ask lawmakers, some lawmakers will say, we built in some gray area into the law because we trust the doctors, and we're not trying to go after all the doctors for making the right decision. So we left that gray area so them, as the medical professionals, can make the right opinion. So the whole thing, though, is very complicated because in the sterile environment of the legislature versus an emergency situation, it's very different. So if you've heard from the doctors and the other 300 that signed on, they want a seat at the table and they want to be there with lawmakers outside of politics to make sure that practically this law functions correctly.
And it could get tossed out, not tossed out, but at least put on pause as of Monday.
As soon as Monday, we'll keep an eye on it.
All right, thank you very much, Joe.